This today was the Miami Hurricanes' most complete performance of the season.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And in this 41-7 beatdown against NC State, Miami showed us what's possible in these final two regular season games. The capability of putting up the style points necessary if you can sneak into the college football playoff. But they also showed us what might have been if they could have played this way consistently throughout the year. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the #1 sports podcast network. And on this episode, we're going to review a dominant 41-7 victory for Miami over the NC State Wolfpack and how this can carry over into these next two must-win games. Miami is basically in their own playoff already. We're going to give out game balls to the players who are most deserving in a game where most everyone played really well. But let's start with the defensive dominance. Miami was excellent on both sides of the football on Saturday, but I want to put this in perspective on Corey Heatherman's side of the football, Miami's DC. Because if you were watching NC State for the first time on Saturday, if you hadn't seen them before, and you watched the way that NC State's offense performed on Saturday, you would probably assume their quarterback is really bad and that offense is incompetent. But it's because Miami made them look that way. And I know that's something that the College Football Playoff Committee is supposed to value and should look at after this performance by the Hurricanes is how much below NC State's averages Miami's defense held them. This game was almost a shutout. And for all intents and purposes, it kind of was, because when NC State scored a touchdown in garbage time, Miami's 3s and 4s were on the field. Like, this one was, 2 minutes and change away from being a 41-0 shutout. Just the backups couldn't quite hold them to that. In fact, NC State didn't cross midfield on offense until the end of the fourth quarter when they scored their late touchdown. Hadn't run a play on Miami's side of the field to that point. And again, if you were watching the Wolfpack for the first time, you probably assumed that offense is as bad as the Syracuse offense or worse than the Stanford offense. Here's the reality. NC State, prior to facing Miami's defense, was averaging over 32 points per game. Miami held them to 7, nearly 0. NC State's top running back, who was back healthy for this game, by the way, he didn't play against Georgia Tech. When NC State put up over 200 rushing yards against Georgia Tech a couple of weeks ago, that was without their star running back, Hollywood Smothers, who was back in this game. And Smothers, prior to facing Miami, was averaging over 100 yards per game. Miami holds Smothers to -2 rushing yards today. 7 carries for -2 yards. Duke Scott, the other star running back at NC State, who went off in his last game for 196 rushing yards and a touchdown against Miami, held him to 7 carries for 14 yards. CJ Bailey, the quarterback of NC State, who's put up video game numbers at times this year, had his homecoming to South Florida, the Chaminade Madonna kid, and it's one he'd probably want to forget pretty quickly. 17 for 30, 120 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. Jakobe Thomas played out of his freaking mind today. He was so good. And also, you note what Miami's defense was without, and I think today it showed you how motivated this group is and how deep this group is. They were without O.J. Frederick again, who had been and when healthy is one of your starting corners. No Frederick, no problem. Miami was without Keionte Scott in this game, who has been your best defensive back and is a Thorpe Award semifinalist. And unfortunately, Cristobal said it after the game, he used the word serious when describing Keionte Scott's injury, which, makes us all pretty doubtful that we're going to see him again this year, which is a big loss. But again, without Keionte Scott, other players stepped up. Bryce Fitzgerald, a true freshman, started in place of Scott, who's a senior, and Fitzgerald played very well. And Jakobe Thomas was the guy who played out of his mind with 2 interceptions and a pick 6. He's put in some very good performances for the Hurricanes this year, has Jakobe. This was his Mona Lisa. This was his masterpiece today. What a player. Miami was without David Blay, arguably your best defensive tackle this year. Next man up, Justin Scott's been playing very well. So you've got defensive depth and you've got defensive motivation. Miami holds NC State to 149 total yards. And again, some of those happened late in the game against Miami's 3s and 4s. You hold them to 149 yards, 120 passing yards, 29 team rushing yards, and you held them to 3 for 12 on third down. Miami played well on the money downs on defense. So just want to emphasize, this was not like a bad offensive team. Miami hosted a bad offensive team last week. Syracuse, very bad offensive team. NC State is not that. They've been a very successful offensive team this year. And the Miami Hurricanes defense put in their best performance of the season. Again, like I'm sorry that the shutout didn't hold, just because, it would just look better on your resume if you completed that shutout. But again, the context of those 7 points that were given up was the 3s and 4s were on the field. But this defense from the jump was so dominant. Akeem Mezador in this game had a sack, had 3 tackles for loss. He was playing great. And we'll talk about the offense here as well. So first thing that stood out to all of us was, and I applaud the coaching staff for this. I applaud running backs coach Matt Merritt, Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, Mario Cristobal, the head coach, who had to sign off on this for it to happen. Girard Pringle, true freshman, who a little over a week ago was still running with the scout team. He gets the start at running back in this game. Now, that sends a message very loud and clear. No matter how old you are, no matter how experienced or inexperienced you are, if you're beating out juniors, sophomores on the depth chart, you're going to play. Malachi Toney's been showing that all season long. Was 17 years old for the first few games of the year. He's been taking jobs from juniors and seniors. Girard Pringle, after what he did in the second half against Syracuse last week, where he had his breakout game, I think it was 7 carries for 55 yards. Miami had to take a leap of faith and say, and Mario Cristobal talked about this after the game, with how well Pringle played in the second half against Syracuse, they had no reason not to start him today. And of course, Mark Fletcher is still injured. But last week, they went with Marty Brown as the starter. They went to Jordan Lyle last week before they went to Pringle. Jordan Lyle didn't even play in this game, actually. Girard Pringle gets the start, and you talk about seizing your opportunity, grabbing the bull by the horns. Pringle goes off 17 carries, 116 rushing yards, had 2 receptions for 32 yards. So he puts up 148 yards of total offense, Pringle. And this kid has something that Miami's other running backs don't have. He's different, he's unique, and he is a starting running back with the way he plays. Not only is he patient and smart with the way he lets the blocks unfold in front of him, but then once he hits that gap, always seems to make the right decision, and he's always decisive, and he's explosive, and he has the extra gear. He's been such a revelation. And yet you've got different backs who do different things. Marty Brown is still valuable as, short yardage guy. He's a battering ram. He's a bowling ball. Mark Fletcher is well-rounded because he's big and strong and he has a little bit of a burst. But Girard Pringle, to me, with his decisiveness, his explosion, he gives you something that the other running backs on this roster don't. And I don't take it for granted the fact that his coaches had enough faith in him, despite the fact he was on the scout team less than 2 weeks ago, to give him the start in this important must-win football game, and he rewarded the coaches with the way he played. Carson Beck, I thought, played a fantastic game today. At one point, he rattled off 13 straight completions. 0 interceptions, which is probably the most important stat, 3 touchdowns, 0 INTs, 21 for 27, 291 yards, and that was in about 3/4 of action because Miami did have the luxury to go to the bench late in the game, give Emory Williams a series, and they gave Luke Nickel kind of like a portion of a series at the end of the game as well. So Beck didn't even have to finish the game, which is obviously a luxury. But I thought he played really, really well today. Hit a couple of important down the field explosive passes. Keelan Marion caught a 35-yarder from Beck. Josh Moore caught a 32-yarder from Beck. Malachi Toney caught 2 touchdowns from Beck. And gosh, like when we're talking offensive weapons, I could have started with Malachi. I appreciate the fact that we are giving this young man the amount of touches and the nature of using him in different ways, whether he's running the football, whether he's throwing the football. Toney threw a 44-yard bomb to JoJo Trader today. That was the play that set up Miami's first offensive touchdown in the game. Toney threw a touchdown pass last week. By the way, he nearly threw another touchdown this week. He just overshot Girard Pringle on what would have been a freshman-to-freshman connection for a big-time play. And so Toney, he's throwing bombs. He's catching touchdowns, had 2 touchdowns receptions today, nearly had a third that was wiped off the board for a very questionable illegal shift penalty. They seem to make up new penalties every time Miami plays. Malachi Toney was fantastic. And gosh, and we'll talk about more of these players when we give out our game balls in a minute, but the Hurricanes offense in this one put up 581 total yards, 581 to 149. That's a destruction. 367 team passing yards to 120. 214 rushing yards when you're without your starter for most of the season in Fletcher, who didn't play, and you start a true freshman and you put up 214 rushing yards today. Miami, by the way, was pretty good on third down. That was an area we needed to see the Hurricanes take advantage of because NC State's defense was giving up about 46% of third down conversions to the opponent. Miami converted 50%, 5 for 10. So the Hurricanes did take advantage of that. And guys, we'll talk about again what we need to see coming out of this 41-7 win. Because again, like it shows you how good this team can be, but also makes you regret why we couldn't see, 4 quarters like this early in the year. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, the weekend is here, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving you more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For your Miami Hurricanes, Girard Pringle Jr. keeps delivering in a big way. Gets his first career start, goes off for 148 total yards. When the pressure is on, Pringle comes through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching for the last couple of weeks, you know the performance on Saturday was not a fluke. Girard Pringle is on a streak. And just like Pringle delivers for the Hurricanes, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you can save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period ends on November 18th. Guys, we're also proudly brought to you by FanDuel. Miami covered today. That 14.5 or 15.5 line, it looked pretty big. But Miami went out there and they win in blowout fashion. And by the way, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. When I'm giving out game balls for this 41-7 win against NC State, I've got to start with both coordinators. Yeah, I think we gave you all the reasons why Corey Heatherman, the DC, deserves a game ball. His defense was completely dominant. They pressured CJ Bailey. The coverage was on point. CJ, who's been having a really good season for the Wolfpack, he looked bad on Saturday. Like, Miami made him look bad. NC State couldn't run the football. I mean, between Duke Scott and Hollywood Smothers, like that's one of the better rushing teams in the ACC. Miami held them to 29 team rushing yards. Miami nearly pitched a shutout in this one. Corey Heatherman, quite frankly, I know that anytime, whether it's me or the truth teller or Grease, and we start talking about, the glory days, early 2000s, 80s, 90s, people are always like, hey, like, stop, you guys are stuck in the past. Let's move on. It's the new millennium. But you got to admit, when you watch Corey Heatherman's defense, the way the defensive line gets upfield, the way the defensive backfield gets physical, and when you start seeing a ball hawk like Jakobe Thomas doing what he's doing with these interceptions, don't we get the flashbacks of the glory days? Like, when we see the defense playing like this and hitting pretty hard as well, yeah, you could say I'm living in the past, but I get those flashbacks of better times when I see Corey Heatherman's defense playing this way. So Coach Heatherman gets a game ball. Shannon Dawson, I know we've been critical. Everybody's been critical of the way the offense has looked at times this year. Living in the A-gap. No variety. He's given us variety now. Like, I don't, he says he doesn't check social media, but his wife does. I don't know if it's Mrs. Dawson seeing everybody complaining about the A-gap and the lack of creativity, because he seems to have gotten the message now. And even, the trick plays, which I like, and Miami seems to have enough of them kind of in the back pages of the playbook that they can get creative and not like burn these plays for future games. Even if all of them don't work, like Miami ran a very unsuccessful flea flicker on Saturday, for example, which, didn't work. Even when they don't work, it still seems to juice the team up. It seems to lighten the mood. Dawson and Beck and Cristobal, they all talked about it last week. At the times when the offense hasn't been working, they've been too uptight. They haven't been having enough fun. And you see, like, what makes this group loosen up and kind of start having fun and not thinking about needing to succeed on the play, just going out there and doing it. It's usually when they start hitting explosive plays and when they have a little more variety, right? When Malachi Toney throws a touchdown pass, or he, and that was a dart that he threw to JoJo Trader on Saturday, by the way. Like, when Toney goes out there and does that, when Girard Pringle breaks off a 23-yard run, even if that's more of a conventional type of play call, it's the explosive plays that give this team juice, take some of the pressure off, and allows this offense to have fun. And they're having more fun these last couple of weeks. And I give Coach Dawson credit. He's been in his bag. He's been a lot more creative. You're running to the outside. You're varying your shotgun formations a little bit. You're not always seeing the same things and the same looks. Players are executing better, which is a big part of it, right? I mean, no matter how great or how terrible your play calls are, if players aren't executing, none of it works. When you're executing, it loosens everything up for these guys. But I give Shannon Dawson credit, right? I mean, earlier in the season, criticism, I'm sure, has been warranted at times, but we also need to give him credit because he's been calling great games, and I thought he called an excellent game on Saturday. He gets a game ball. Girard Pringle, he gets a game ball. His first 100-yard-plus game, first of many, I think, because when you see Girard, like, he's got the makings of, I mean, he already is, as of today, a starting running back at the University of Miami. He took advantage of his opportunity. 117 rushing yards, 32 receiving yards, nearly had a touchdown. Malachi Toney just overthrew him a little bit. And Malachi Toney gets a game ball as well. His numbers for today, Toney had 5 receptions for 54 yards, 2 touchdowns. He threw a 44-yard pass. He had a 3-yard run, only 1 run on Saturday for Toney, which was kind of low compared to what he's had in recent weeks. But all the different ways Malachi is affecting the game. And when he threw that 44-yard pass, The first text that I got of many, but the first text that I got was from the truth teller who said, there he is, Malachi Toney. He's drawing the defense away, decoy again. Like you get the football in his hands, magical things happen. Carson Beck, he gets a game ball. 21 for 27 today, nearly 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Was very efficient. This is probably his most efficient game of the year. Akeem Mezador, Jakobe Thomas, they get game balls on defense. You're tempted to give the entire defense game balls in this one. We mentioned Bryce Fitzgerald stepping up, getting an opportunity to start. Xavier Lucas played very well in coverage. I thought Popo Aguirre, Mo Torre had good games. There's a lot of them to go around, but obviously the guys who impacted the stat sheet probably the most were Akeem Mezador with the TFL and the sack, and, of course, Jakobe Thomas. He was the star. He was the star on defense with the interceptions. And you notice when he had the pick six, did you see on the video replay when he was like 10 yards away from the end zone, and he pointed at somebody? I think he was pointing at C.J. Bailey, like, come tackle me, man. I just picked off your pass. Why don't you come and tackle me? I'm pretty sure that's who he was pointing at. A little bit of swag from Jakobe Thomas. You know what? With the way people officiate Miami games, I guess we're lucky we didn't get, like, any sort of a penalty thrown for the celebration or the taunting, but I'm a huge fan of Jakobe Thomas. He's actually a friend of the show, Jakobe. We had him on early in the season, and he's been backing it up on the field. He was tremendous today. So here's the bottom line coming out of this performance. Most complete game Miami has played all year. Before today, I would have said USF. It's now NC State, right? Miami was going up against a pretty good football team, and it looked like a high-level college team playing against a high school team. My guy Grease said that on the postcast, and he's exactly right. Like, Miami made NC State look like a high school team today. Miami did that. Syracuse last week, terrible football team. NC State is not. NC State is a good team, and Miami made them look bad. So the encouraging thing I take out of this is and you saw it trending this way, like second half of the Syracuse game, like Miami has now played 6 consecutive quarters of complete football. It was second half against Syracuse, 4 quarters against NC State. If you play like this for the next 8 quarters, Virginia Tech is not going to be able to stop you. Pittsburgh. Yeah, I know Pittsburgh's a pretty good team. Their coach is a loser, though. Pat Narduzzi. Against Notre Dame, it's not a must-win. It doesn't matter. If they beat us 110-3, it doesn't matter as long as we win our ACC games. Loser talk. I think your team takes on your personality. They got beaten up really badly by Notre Dame. Maybe they'll take us more seriously because it's a conference game, but if Miami plays the way that they played on Saturday, Virginia Tech's not going to stop you. Pittsburgh is not going to stop you. So the quest becomes consistency, right? Miami needs to keep playing with this same juice, with this same pride, with this same personality, led by a quarterback who I know Carson's had his ups and downs this year, but coming off a really good game against NC State, a guy who is started more than 35 career games as a college quarterback. Carson Beck has the experience, to give you that opportunity. Again, it's not a guarantee. You didn't get all the help that you needed on Saturday. Thanks for nothing, Crimson Tide, for not beating Georgia. That would have helped Miami a lot. You don't control your own destiny, but if you win your final 2 games and you do so in impressive fashion, you're going to give yourself a chance to sneak into that college football playoff. Play the way that you did on Saturday. Nobody's going to stop you from winning out. Nobody. When I look back, I always like to, after the game is done, I look to go back at my keys to the game and see if Miami accomplished them, okay? My first key to the game was to attack NC State's defensive secondary. They're poor against the pass. Miami attacked that. Again, Carson had 291 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Combined with the backup quarterbacks, Miami finished this game with 367 passing yards. Mission accomplished. You attacked the NC State secondary. You executed that. My next key was hit an explosive play early in the game to loosen up your offense. Miami did that. I think the very first explosive play, I think, was a Carson Beck, the 35 or 32-yard pass to Keelan Marion. Keelan had another great game, by the way. He's been really good the past few weeks. It was a Beck 32-yard or 35 to Keelan. Was a big play. And then, of course, the next big play was the bomb from Malachi Toney to JoJo Trader. And those were in the first half. So you hit your big plays early. You loosen up the offense. Mission accomplished. All right, so my next one was, and this one you batted 50%, all right? You batted 500. Keep the turnovers down and keep the penalties down. Miami did that with the turnovers. The Hurricanes won the turnover margin today. The only turnover was the one fumble. Miami lost a fumble. Marty Brown, no interceptions today, while NC State had 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. So Miami wins the turnover margin +1. The penalties, you didn't feel as though it was like complete self-destruction. And in fact, a couple of those I thought were bad calls. Like there was, I thought, a phantom pass interference call that went against Xavier Lucas. I thought it was just good, tight coverage. And then there was an illegal shift penalty that the ACC just badly wanted to take a touchdown off the board at that point. They do that to Miami like once per game. But, Miami did lose. They did lose the penalty battle, 8 penalties for 75 yards. NC State had 4 penalties for 30. So, again, you didn't have all the procedure penalties and stuff, but you did lose the penalty battle, so you did not accomplish that. You want to keep that clean for the rest of the season if you can. And my final key, and Miami did this absolutely, to get strong defensive back play despite Keionte Scott being out and despite O.J. Frederick being out. Everybody played great back there. Everybody did. Jakobe Thomas was your defensive MVP, arguably the MVP of the game, although he had some competition there from Malachi Toney and a few others. Bryce Fitzgerald filling in a starting job as a true freshman. Xavier Lucas played fantastic. Damari Brown. So next man up mentality was on full display. Keionte Scott is a huge loss, but Miami was able to make up for that. So I thought that was really, really good. Again, as for what needs to happen the next 2 weeks, you play the way that you played today, you're going to be fine. If you don't play the way you did today, we're going to have some tough conversations over the next couple of games. But, Miami improves to 8-2 on the season. You control your own destiny for your second straight double-digit win season, which Miami hasn't done that. 2 straight double-digit wins. You haven't done that since 2002 and 2003. So you have a chance to do something special, and it would show what Mario Cristobal is building here. Now, obviously, you want to be in the playoff. You absolutely want that. We'll be disappointed if we're not, but I do think if you zoom out, if Miami is able to get a second straight 10 and a chance at an 11-win season and have that back-to-back for the first time in 22 years, I think that is something worth noting. And again, like when we're going to be talking, I'm sure the next few days about recruiting targets and stuff, to see young players, to see Girard Pringle do what he did on Saturday, to see Malachi Toney doing what he's been doing all season, to see Bryce Fitzgerald stepping up and getting chances to start on defense. If you're a true freshman at Miami, you're winning your job. You're going to play despite how young you are. If you earn your opportunity, you're going to get your opportunities on the field. That is the bottom line. And, again, at the time that I'm recording this, there's still a few games that are in progress that could help or hurt Miami. Like, at the time that I'm talking here, Georgia is up 4 against Texas. If Georgia beats Texas, that helps you. Texas probably drops below you. 12th ranked BYU is going to play TCU late tonight. If TCU wins, that would help you. It would have been a big help today if Alabama had beaten Oklahoma, and instead of roll tide, we got troll tide today because Bama lost to Oklahoma, which is bad, really bad for our playoff chances. But it ain't over till it's over, and we'll talk about those scenarios throughout the week as well. So thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, and make sure to keep supporting all the great shows on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are now the #1 sports podcast network, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Locked On Network, your team every day.